Okay, so let me just write this function. So this is my function, which is the valid function call here. Okay, I'll write the options. Which is the valid one here? If this is my function, if I am calling my function, okay, which is the valid way of calling a function here?
Last one.
Fourth one, sir.
Yes.
Right, fourth one, because it takes three parameters, 1, 2, 3. At the time of calling, we have to pass three parameters, which is this 1, 2, 3. So this will throw error because it is expecting three parameters and here we are passing 0. So this is wrong. Here it is expecting 3 and we are passing 1. This is wrong. It is expecting 3 and we are passing 2. This is wrong. So it is expecting 3 and we are passing 3, and hence this is correct. So the last one is correct. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Yes, sir.
So now now going further, we'll learn one more thing, right? Okay. So in the functions, whenever we are defining functions, there are two kinds of parameters. One is positional parameters or arguments. Okay. Another one is called keyword arguments. So whatever we have seen so far, they are all positional. Positional arguments are mandatory. Meaning if I've given three parameters, you have to ensure you have to pass three parameters. Otherwise, it is going to throw an error, right? So keyword arguments are optional. Keywords are optional. Okay. Positional are mandatory. Keyword arguments are optional. Okay. Another important point. Positional arguments should always be at first in parameter list. Parameter order. Should be last okay, I'll talk about it. So if you see here, there are two kinds of arguments. Positional arguments, keyword arguments. What are we saying? Positional arguments are mandatory arguments. Optional arguments, keyword arguments are optional, as in it is not necessary that you should pass those values at the time of calling that function. Okay. And always positional argument should be first, whereas keyword argument should be at the end or in the last in the order. Okay, so for example, here I'm writing two functions. Okay. Def positional args a comma b, right? And then here I'm just going to say print a plus b. Now, if I'm supposed to call this function, I can call this function with the name, and I should pass two parameters, right? Otherwise, this is going to throw an error. So this is positional, right? This is the reason I said mandatory as if I have given two parameters, I have to pass two parameters at the time of calling that function. Yes, and hence it becomes mandatory. And keyword arguments are optional. Keyword args, right? What I'm going to say, A equal to 10 and B equals to 20. Now, what is the difference between positional and keyword now? What is that difference that you are noticing? It has got a default value. It has got a default value. This also has two parameters, right? And here also we have two parameters, A and B, but they have got default values. They have got default values. Now, if I have to call this function, I can call this function in three ways. Keyword args, I can call directly. Okay, this will output 30 because there are a default values 10 and 20. Now it doesn't care. I mean, if you provide, it will take that value. If you don't provide, it will take the default value.
Yeah, okay, sir.
Right? Keyword args, and I am passing 50. So now what will be the output here? Now A value, initially it was what? 10.
10.
10, sir.
Right? Now it gets replaced with 50 because that is what I'm overriding that value 10 with 50 at the time of calling the function. I'm passing 50. So now the output would be 70.
70.
Now I'll pass. Now I'm passing both A and B value. It will override the default values. It will override the default values and it will say 50 and 60. 50 is assigned to A and 60 is assigned to B. The output would be
110.
110.
right. So keyword arguments. Now with this, what you can understand is positional arguments are mandatory. As in, if I give two parameters at the time of calling, you have to give two parameters. Anything lesser, it will throw error. Okay. We will see this second one. So, but however, the keyword arguments are optional. Optional as in, because we have given a default value, you can choose to pass or you can choose to ignore. Right? That is how these two can be passed. These two call will be passed because there are default values to it, because there are default values for it. Okay. All right. Let me just create a new file. Okay. Simple def. Right. So if I'm calling this function like this, if I call it, let me run this. This is going to throw error. Type error. Positional arguments missing two required positional arguments. Missing two required positional arguments. So it is failing, right? So if I give 10 also, I'm just passing one parameter now, and let me rerun it. It will still say one required positional argument B is missing. One required positional argument B. So here, let me pass 10. Now this is a valid thing for it. This is a valid. Yeah, this is what we have seen, and this is what we have known so far. Now, keyword arguments are positional, sorry, keyword args, right? A is equal to 10, or let me just say A is equal to 0, B is equal to 0. These are default values. Okay, I'm going to say print A plus B. I'm going to comment out this positional arguments call. Now see what happens here. How many parameters does the keyword arguments function take?
2 parameters.
There are 2 parameters. Now what are the default values?
0 and 0. A is equal to 0, B is equal to 0.
Right now, if and only if we pass the values, it will override those default values. If we don't pass the values, it will always take the default values. It will always take the default values. So for example, if I'm going to run this, it is not going to throw any error because I'm calling my function keyword arguments without passing any parameter. It still works because my default values are 0 and 0. Right, you can see that the output is 0. Yeah, it is not throwing any error now. Now let me just pass 10 to it. Now if you see what would be the output, I'm passing value 10 to the parameter A. So 10 plus 0 is 10 itself, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. Now I'm going to call
Yes,
this
sir.
function in one more way where I'm going to pass. Right. So let us save it and execute it. Now what will be the output?
60.
Right. 50 plus
Yes, sir.
10. Right. So A is 10 and B is 50, and eventually we get this output. But if you see here, if you clearly notice, the clear difference between the positional and arguments, keyword arguments are positional are mandatory. If I give 2, I should pass 2. If I give 3, I should pass 3. If I give 4, I should pass 4. Otherwise, the function call will fail. It will throw an error and the function call will fail. For example, if I uncomment this positional argument code and I remove one parameter here, right? And if we run this, this is going to throw an error clearly. Type error, positional argument missing one required positional argument B. But whereas here we have called it in 3 different formats. One without any parameters, it passed. With one parameter, it passed. With 2 parameters, it passed. So this becomes optional parameters. This becomes optional arguments or parameters. Are we clear?
Clear, sir.
Clear,
Yes, sir.
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, okay. Now let us look at the second point. What is the second point? Positional arguments should be first in the parameter order. Optional should be last in the parameter order. Okay, so if I am writing a function, I can now what we have seen is like one function with only positional, one function with only keyword. You can always have a combination as well. You can always have a combination as well, which is you can have few parameters as positional, few parameters as keyword. Okay, but keyword should always be the last ones, not the positional. Right? So here I have how many parameters?
5 parameters.
5, sir.
5 parameters. How
Five
many are
parameters.
positional and how many are keyword?
3
3
positional, 2
positional.
3
keywords.
positional, 2 keyword.
Right? 3 positional and 2 keyword.
2 keyword.
Right. So if I'm calling this function, let us say there is something in it. If I'm calling this function, how many ways I can call this function? What is the minimum number of parameters that are required to execute this function?
3 parameters.
Right? 3 parameters, because my positional are 3, I should ensure that I should pass 3. Right? I can ignore it, or I can pass 10, 20, 30, 40. Fine. Now this gets replaced with 40, right? Or I can call it. And now the last E parameter I'm passing it as 5. Now this gets replaced with 5. Right. If you notice here now, just because we have got the keyword arguments, you can always use a combination of positional and keyword. First is the positional, should be always the first one. Keyword should always be the last one. Okay. Positional should always be the first and keyword should always be at the last. This is a very important thing. Positional first, keyword should be last in the order. Keyword should be last in the order. Clear?
Clear,
Sir.
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay. Right. Now, always positional parameters are mandatory. They should always be passed. Here, if we have 3 parameters, the 3 parameters are minimum that is required to execute this function. Okay. Now, can I write a function like this? Is this the valid function declaration?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Why? Positional should be first, keyword should be last. Here, what is happening?
No.
We have put the keyword at the
Keyword.
first, and
Keywords
hence
in the first.
this is not valid. Hence,
No.
this is not
Valid.
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 Valid, not valid.
Not valid.
Not
Not
valid, sir.
valid.
Because the last one is a
Positional.
positional. So
Positional
this should,
Position
argument.
parameter.
right? With the last one should be the keywords, not the positional, and hence this also is wrong.
Not valid.
Okay,
Not
invalid, invalid. The only valid thing is positional should always be the last. Valid, not valid?
Valid.
Valid.
Yeah, valid, sir.
Right?
Valid.
Positional first, keyword last. It is valid. Right. So that is what we meant by the second statement. Right. Positional argument should be first in the parameter order. Optional argument should be last in the parameter order. Clear?
Clear,
Sir.
sir.
Clear, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. What if I give, right? What if I give, um, okay, let me come to that. More parameters. So the function I have is this. Okay, first let us finish this example here. I'm going to comment this out for a moment. To comment this out as well. Right. So this is the combo. This is a combination of. So minimum required parameters is 2 because it has got 2 parameters and we can execute it. Right. This gets called and this has got a right. This gets called and hence this is valid. Now what if I do this? Right now, if I try to execute this throws an error. Right, this is the syntax error. Why? Non-default argument follows default argument. Right, which means positional should be the first ones, right, followed by the default arguments. Non-default as in positional, default as in keyword. Okay, so which means always positional arguments first, default arguments at the last, or keyword arguments at the last. Are we clear?
Yes, sir.
Clear, sir.
Clear, sir. Clear, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, now I have this function. Okay, now tell me, which is the valid one here?
Second
Second one, sir.
Second one, sir.
Right, it is expecting 2 parameters and we are passing 2 parameters, hence valid. The first one we are passing less parameters, invalid. The third one we are passing more parameters, more than 2, and hence this is also invalid. You have to pass exact number. If it is expecting 2, you have to pass 2. You cannot pass less or you cannot pass more. Right, this also throws similar error, type error, a request expected 2 but passed 3. Okay, even this is a problematic one. So you have to always pass the exact number of parameters, exact number of the parameters. So for example, here 10, 20, 30, 40 is the expected. Now I'm going to pass fifth parameters, which is 50. And if I run this, okay, it says was takes 2 to 4. Either 2 is the minimum and max is the 4, but 5 were given, but 5 were given. Understood. So you cannot pass more parameters than requested than asked. Are we clear?
Yes, sir.
Clear,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Clear, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now this is a valid one, right? It has got only one keyword argument and 3 positional arguments. Okay. Okay. Now, at the time of calling function, we know now maybe minimum required parameters is 3. So we should pass 3 because there are 3 positional arguments. D you can choose to pass or you can choose to ignore. Right. So whatever it is, the output would be present. Right. So now for this, I can, so generally, now what happens, right? So yeah, we know 10 goes to A, 20 goes to B, 30 goes to C, and 40 goes to D. So what are we doing here? What does this mean? It is always order of parameters equals to or order of the runtime, order of the arguments that we have passed. Right? The first parameter always goes to the first variable, first parameter, first to second value goes to the second parameter, third value goes to the third, and fourth value goes to the fourth parameter. Yes. The order of the passing of the parameters goes by the order of the arguments of a function. Clear?
Clear,
Clear,
sir.
sir.
Clear, sir.
Right? If at all, if you want to change this order, you can choose to change. How is that? I can say D is equal to 50 or C is equal to 40, A is equal to 20, and C is equal to 60. Right? Now what I'm doing here is, I know what is my parameter name is, right? Now it requires 4 parameters and I am passing 4 parameters. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Right. But I'm changing the order. Now I'm not going by the order. Right. So in this case, what Python does is, okay, first it will check, okay, are the required parameters present? C, A, and okay, C, A, and B. Let me call this B. Right. It will check, okay, do I have required parameters? Yes. Okay, which is C has 40, A has 20, B has 60. Now this Python will assign values accordingly. So A is 20, B is 60, and C is 40, and D is 50. So Python is smart enough to understand this pattern and assign the values respectively, because here we are assigning A is equal to 20, B is equal to 60, C equal to 40, and D equal to 50. So it will do the assignment properly. Though here it is not in the order, but you are going by as a key and word, key and word, key and word, key and word. Key is your D, word is your value. Okay. And hence, if Python, this is a valid calling. This is a valid way of calling a function. Let us look at that. Right, the same thing, the order we know. Now I'm going to just change the order. Now D is equal to 10. I'm going to just print the values here. I'm just going to print the values A, B, C, D. Whatever it is passed at the time of calling, it should pass. A is 50, D is 10, C is 40, B is 15. Now, if I execute this function, valid or not valid, did we get the right value? A is 50. Go by this print statement. First value is what we are printing, A. What is the value that was passed to A? 50. Is it 50 here? 50 seen here,
Yes. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
right?
Yes, sir.
Next value that I'm printing is B. And what is the value that I had passed for B?
15.
15.
15.
Next value that is in the list is here. The printing order is C. And what is the
40.
value that we have passed for C? 40.
40.
And the
40,
last
sir.
value is D. And what is the value that we passed for D?
10.
10.
Right. You can always choose to pass it along with the parameters, but this you will be doing very, very rarely. Very, very rarely. Otherwise, you will always pass it to the parameter. But once you use this approach, you cannot go back to the regular approach. You cannot go back to the regular approach. What is it? I cannot do this. Okay. No, I cannot do this. So if I'm just like argument function declaration, right? Which comes first? Positional argument is first, keyword is last. Even
Last.
here, right? Even here, this is invalid. So if I have to correct, so I have to make it positional first, right? I have to make a positional first. And keyword at end and keyword at end. Right. So this is valid. That if I'm passing any default values like with the parameter name, then I have to use this approach. Always positional first and keyword at the last. Clear?
Clear, sir.
Sir.
Clear, sir.
Clear, sir.